Axiochus. Plato. Introduction. Philosophy in the face of death, consolation, courage, and the eternal soul. Axiochus is a short, poignant, and philosophically rich dialogue that grapples with one of the most universal and unsettling human experiences: the fear of death. Though traditionally attributed to Plato, most scholars today agree that Axiochus is a pseudonymous work, likely composed during the Hellenistic period by a Platonist author seeking to address the spiritual and emotional concerns of readers through a dialogue styled in the Platonic tradition. Despite questions about its authorship, Axiochus stands as a moving and powerful text that synthesizes Platonic thought with popular moral philosophy and offers a timeless meditation on mortality, the immortality of the soul, and the art of dying well. The dialogue unfolds at the deathbed of Axiochus, a respected Athenian who finds himself gripped by fear and despair as the end of his life approaches. Socrates is summoned to comfort him, and in typical philosophical fashion, he engages Axiochus in a dialogue aimed not at distraction or flattery, but at rational and spiritual consolation. The text combines elements of Platonic metaphysics, Stoic resilience, Pythagorean mysticism, and Epicurean clarity, drawing from a wide reservoir of ancient wisdom traditions in an effort to calm the soul in its final hour. The central claim of Axiochus is that death is not to be feared, because the soul is either immortal and destined for a higher existence beyond the body, or it dissolves into nothingness, in which case there is no longer a subject left to suffer. This dual argument, both metaphysical and pragmatic, mirrors a familiar pattern in ancient consolation minos. Literature. Either the soul ascends to the divine, or death is merely a peaceful release from the troubles of life. In both scenarios, the fear of death is shown to be irrational, the product of ignorance and illusion rather than knowledge and insight. What makes Axiochus especially compelling is its emotional tone. The dialogue does not begin with confidence or abstract theorizing, but with panic, anguish, and trembling. Axiochus, for all his education and public stature, is unprepared for death. He is shocked by the weakness of his body, tormented by the thought of leaving behind life and pleasure, and ashamed of his fear. This raw emotional state provides the backdrop for Socrates' gentle but insistent reasoning, which seeks not merely to instruct but to transform, replacing fear with understanding, sorrow with hope, and uncertainty with philosophical clarity. In this sense, Axiochus belongs to the genre of consolatio, a literary tradition aimed at comforting those in grief or preparing the soul for death. Yet, unlike many consolation texts that rely on rhetorical devices or poetic musings, Axiochus remains grounded in philosophical reasoning. It presents arguments for the soul's immortality, discusses the nature of the body and its relation to the self, reflects on the rewards of virtue and the purification of the soul, and even contemplates the fate of the soul after death in vivid imagery. For modern readers, Axiochus offers a rare and meaningful encounter with ancient philosophical spirituality. It speaks directly to the perennial human anxiety about mortality, offering not dogma, but wisdom, not superstition, but reflection. It reminds us that philosophy is not merely an intellectual pursuit, but a way of preparing the soul to live rightly and die peacefully. It is a handbook for courage in the face of the unknown, and an invitation to reimagine death not as an end, but as a beginning. Minos. Death, the body, and the journey of the soul. The fear of death, as Axiochus opens, is visceral and immediate. Axiochus confesses that although he once scoffed at the idea of death, in his final moments he finds himself overcome by dread. He is troubled by the thought of leaving behind earthly pleasures, of losing his place in the world, and of plunging into an unknown void. This emotional crisis is not uncommon. Indeed, it is precisely what makes the dialogue so relatable. Socrates does not mock Axiochus for his fear, nor does he treat him with cold detachment. Instead, he offers a systematic account of why this fear is unfounded and rooted in false beliefs. Central to Socrates' consolation is the distinction between the soul and the body. Drawing on Platonic dualism, he explains that the soul is the true self, while the body is a temporary and burdensome vessel. The soul existed before its embodiment and will exist after its release. This teaching echoes the arguments found in dialogues like Phaedo, where the soul is described as immortal, rational, and akin to the divine. Death, then, is not a loss but a liberation, a return of the soul to its pure, incorporeal state where it can contemplate eternal truths without the distractions and deceits of the body. Socrates reinforces this view by pointing to the testimony of religious traditions and philosophical schools that affirm the soul's survival after death. He references the Eleusinian mysteries, Orphic doctrines, and Pythagorean teachings, all of which speak of the soul's journey beyond the grave. These references situate Axiochus within a broader spiritual culture of ancient Greece, where philosophy, religion, and myth often intertwined in the search for meaning. At the same time, Socrates does not rely exclusively on metaphysical speculation. He also employs pragmatic reasoning similar to Epicurean thought. If death is the end of consciousness, then it is not something to be feared, because there is no longer a subject left to Minos. Suffer. Just as we do not fear the time before our birth, so too should we not fear the time after our death. In this way, the dialogue combines the hope of immortality with the comfort of naturalistic detachment, offering a two-pronged argument against the fear of death. Another key theme in Axiochus is the moral value of life. Socrates reminds Axiochus that he has lived a virtuous and honorable life, and that this is the best preparation for death. The soul that has practiced justice, moderation, and wisdom is ready to be released. In contrast, it is the wicked and impure soul that should fear death, for it has not cultivated the virtues necessary for harmony with the divine. This moral emphasis reflects the Platonic idea that philosophy is a preparation for death, not in a morbid sense, but in the sense that the philosophical life purifies the soul and attunes it to eternal realities. Finally, Socrates describes death as a journey, not a disappearance. He speaks of the soul traveling to the realm of the gods, joining the company of the wise and the good, and escaping the sufferings of bodily existence. This vision of the afterlife is not dogmatic, but aspirational. It serves as a poetic and philosophical image of what awaits those who have lived rightly and loved truth. By the end of the dialogue, Axiochus is comforted. He no longer trembles with fear, but prepares himself to face death with calm and dignity. His transformation is the fruit of philosophy, not abstract speculation, but living wisdom that touches the soul and brings peace. The dialogue thus fulfills its function as a consolatory work, while also offering a profound meditation on the meaning of death and the nature of the soul. Consolation, immortality, and the continuing power of philosophy. Axiochus belongs to a genre of philosophical and literary works designed to console and elevate the human spirit in the face of Minos, mortality. While it may lack the dialectical rigor of Phaedo or the psychological depth of Republic, it compensates with emotional resonance and moral clarity. It speaks to those who, like Axiochus, find themselves afraid, uncertain, or unprepared for the inevitable reality of death. It offers not mere comfort, but a philosophical path towards serenity. The dialogue's enduring power lies in its integration of multiple philosophical traditions. From Plato, it takes the dualism of soul and body, the immortality of the soul, and the moral significance of virtue. From the Pythagoreans, it borrows the idea of the soul's transmigration and its ascent to a higher realm. From the Stoics and Epicureans, it incorporates the insight that fear is born of ignorance, and that peace comes from clarity of thought. The result is a text that is both intellectually rich and spiritually nourishing. Even in its brevity, Axiochus encapsulates some of the most important teachings of ancient philosophy: that we are not merely bodies, but souls, that the good life is the best preparation for death, that fear arises from ignorance, and that wisdom, far from being an abstract exercise, has the power to transform our deepest emotions. For modern readers, Axiochus is especially relevant in an age where death is often sanitized, hidden, or denied. It reminds us that to live fully, we must also learn how to die well, not in despair or confusion, but with insight, courage, and a sense of harmony with the cosmos. It teaches that philosophy is not only about the big questions of truth and knowledge, but also about the intimate and personal journey of the soul as it approaches its final horizon. Whether we accept the dialogue's metaphysical claims or not, the moral and emotional wisdom it offers remains valuable. It challenges us to examine our lives, to confront our fears, and to seek peace not in illusion or distraction, but in understanding. In this way, Axiochus serves as a spiritual companion, gentle, wise, and enduring, inviting us to meet death not with terror, but with tranquility. Minos. In conclusion, Axiochus may not be Plato's, but it is profoundly Platonic. It embodies the spirit of Socratic philosophy, the ethics of the soul, and the beauty of wisdom that reaches beyond argument to touch the heart. It is a dialogue not only for the dying but for the living, for all who seek to face life and death with clarity, dignity, and grace. Minos. Axiochus. A discussion with Axiochus. About death. Socrates. I was on my way to Sinosarges and had just reached the Elesis River when I heard someone calling my name. Socrates! Socrates! I turned around to see who it was, and I saw Clinias, the son of Axiochus, running toward the Calero spring. He was with Damon, a musician, and Charmides, the son of Glaucon. Damon was Clinias's music teacher, and Charmides was his close friend, someone he both loved and was loved by. So I decided to take a different path to meet them so we could all walk together more easily. Clinias, with tears in his eyes, said, "Socrates, now is the time to show the wisdom you're known for." My father suddenly became very weak and is close to death. He's really struggling with the thought of dying. This is surprising because he used to make fun of people who feared death and would gently scold them. Please come comfort him, like you always do, so he can face death peacefully. That way, I'll also be fulfilling my duty as his son. I answered, Clinias, you won't be let down by me, especially since you're asking me to do something so meaningful. Let's hurry, because if things are that serious, there's no time to waste. Clinias, just seeing you will lift his spirits, Socrates. He's bounced back before, even from serious illness. Socrates. We walked quickly along the city wall and reached the Etonian gates. He lives near there, close to the monument to the Amazons. When we got there, he had regained some strength in his body, but his mind was still weak. He clearly needed comfort. He kept sitting up, groaning, crying, and beating his hands in frustration. When I saw him, I said, "What's going on, Axiochus? Where's the confidence and talk about virtue you used to have? You used to seem so strong and fearless. But now you're acting like someone who only looked brave during practice but gave up when the real challenge came. You're an old man, someone who has heard many wise teachings. And you're an Athenian, no less. Haven't you learned that life is just a short stay on earth? And we should go through it calmly and wisely? When the time comes to leave, we should do it without fear. But here you are, clinging to life like a scared child. That's not how a wise person should act." Axiochus. You're right, Socrates. What you're saying makes sense. But somehow now that I'm truly facing death, all the smart and powerful ideas I once believed in seem to disappear. I feel afraid. The thought of losing the light of this world, of missing all the good things in life and of rotting in the ground. Forgotten really scares me. I picture myself turning into worms and other creepy things. Socrates, you're confusing things, Axiochus. You're acting like you'll still be aware after you die, as if you'll feel pain and miss the good things in life. But death is the end of feeling. You won't feel anything, good or bad. It's like before you were born, you didn't exist, so nothing mattered. And just like the troubles during the times of Draco and Cleisthenes didn't affect you because you weren't alive then, the same will be true after death. You won't be around to experience anything. Let go of these silly fears. Think about this. When the soul leaves the body and returns to its proper place, what's left behind is just a body, no longer a person. We are our souls, living, immortal beings trapped in a mortal shell. Nature has designed this body with all sorts of pains and just a few pleasures that never last long. And on top of that, we suffer from diseases and all kinds of inner struggles. Our soul wants to return to the heavens, its real home, where it belongs. It longs for peace and joy again. So dying isn't something to fear. It's actually a good change. Axiochus, but Socrates, if you think life is so bad, why are you still here? And especially you who seem wiser than the rest of us. Socrates, you're wrong about me, Axiochus. Most people think that just because I ask a lot of questions and explore ideas, I must know everything. But honestly, I'd be happy just to understand ordinary things, let alone the deep stuff. The ideas I'm sharing now aren't even mine. They're the teachings of a wise man named Prodicus. He doesn't give lessons for free. Some cost half a drachma, others 2 or 4. He always says, like Epicharmus did, hand wash his hand, give something to get something. Not long ago I heard him speak at the house of Callias, the son of Hipponicus. He talked so strongly against the idea of clinging to life that I felt like crossing out the word life from my thoughts completely. Since then, Axiochus, I've come to see death as something to welcome. Axiochus. What did he say exactly? Socrates, I'll tell you what I remember. He said, what part of life doesn't include pain? Even a baby cries as soon as it's born. Life starts with pain. The baby doesn't stop suffering either. It cries because it's hungry, too cold, too hot, or hurt in some way. It can't explain what's wrong, so crying is the only way it can show how it feels. Then, by the time the child is around 7, after going through so much already, it's sent to school. There, teachers and instructors start to take control, teaching grammar, discipline, and other subjects. As the child grows, even more people step in teaching writing, math, and even military training. Then, when he's old enough, he gets registered as a young citizen. But things don't get easier. He has to deal with places like the Lyceum and Academy, strict gym instructors, and countless challenges. His whole youth is spent under supervision, with leaders assigned by the city's council to guide him. Once he's finally free from all that, new problems pop up. He starts to worry about what kind of life he should live. The things he went through as a kid now seem easy compared to what lies ahead. War, injuries, constant struggles. Then old age sneaks in without warning. It brings everything close to death and is hard to fix. If someone doesn't die early, nature starts collecting a price. Like a loan shark. She might take his sight, or his hearing, or both. And if he still hangs on, she brings on strokes, injuries, or twisted limbs. Even those who stay mentally sharp become like children again in old age. That's why the gods, who know what's best for humans, often let their favorites die sooner. Look at Agamedes and Trophonius. They built a temple for the god at Delphi when they prayed to be given the best thing in life. They went to bed and never woke up. The sons of the priestess of Hera did something similar. When their mother asked the goddess to honor them for their kindness, they pulled her to the temple themselves when the animals were late. That night, they died peacefully. Poets talk about this all the time. They've written songs and stories about how hard life is. One of them wrote, The gods made life sad for humans from the start, and of all the creatures on earth, none suffers more than man. And what about Amphiaraus? Zeus and Apollo both loved him deeply, but even he didn't live long enough to reach old age. So what does that tell you? That we're supposed to cry for every newborn because they're about to face a hard life. But I'll stop here. I don't want to go on too long, even though I could mention many more examples. Now think about this. Is there any job or skill someone chooses that doesn't come with problems? People complain about whatever they're doing. Look at blacksmiths or factory workers. They work all night just to get by. They're always sad and spend their sleepless nights crying. What about sailors? They face huge risks every day. Bias once said they're like people stuck between life and death. They've left the safety of land and thrown themselves into the mercy of the sea, hoping luck will protect them. You might think farming is peaceful, but it's not. Farmers are always worried. Sometimes about drought, sometimes about rain or crops burning up or rotting or bad weather. There's always something to worry about. And politics? It's full of chaos. People rise and fall quickly. Even when it seems exciting, it's like being sick with fever, always shaking. But when it goes bad, it's worse than death. Who could be happy trying to please the public? At first, the crowd might cheer or applaud, but then they turn and that same person gets booed, fined, or even killed. Tell me, Axiochus, where did Miltiades die, or Themistocles, or Ephialtes, and recently the 10 generals? I didn't even vote in that trial because I didn't want to be part of such madness. But Theramenes and Calixenus snuck in fake leaders and got a death sentence passed without a real trial. And you, Axiochus, supported that along with Euryptolemus, even while 30,000 people were in the crowd. Axiochus, you're right, Socrates. Since that time, I've lost all interest in politics. Nothing feels worse to me now. Anyone who's been involved knows this. You see it from a distance, but we've lived it. The public is ungrateful, quick to turn on you, mean, jealous, and ignorant. It's made of random people with no sense, and the person who tries to please them ends up miserable. Socrates. So if you think even the most respected career, politics, is something to avoid, what does that say about all the others? Shouldn't we stay away from them too? I once heard Prodicus say something interesting. He claimed death doesn't really exist for either the living or the dead. Axiochus, what do you mean? Socrates, think about it. If you're alive, death hasn't happened to you. If you're dead, then you don't exist anymore. So death isn't something that exists for either group. It doesn't exist for you now because you're alive. And if anything happens after you die, it still won't affect you because you won't be around anymore. So this sadness you feel, Axiochus, grieving for Axiochus, it's about something that isn't real. It's like being sad about monsters that don't exist. When you're gone, you won't feel fear or pain, because fear only affects those who are still here. Those who no longer exist can't be afraid. Axiochus. Socrates. All those clever things you said sound like the kind of fancy talk people use to impress young men. It's smart sounding, but it doesn't help me. What really hurts is the thought of losing all the good things in life. No matter how convincing your reasons are, they won't take that pain away. When the mind is overwhelmed, it doesn't care about fancy words or beautiful speeches. Pain doesn't listen to clever arguments. Only things that truly reach the heart can make a difference. Socrates. Axiochus, you're mixing things up. You're acting like someone who's going to suffer from losing good things, even though you forget you won't exist anymore after death. Only someone who is alive can miss things. If you're not alive, you can't feel pain or loss. How can you fear something that you'll never even be aware of? If you had understood earlier that there's no feeling after death, you wouldn't be so afraid of it now. But instead, you're afraid of losing your soul, while still thinking the soul will feel the loss. You're scared that you won't have feelings, but also imagine that you'll notice not having them. That doesn't make sense. There are many strong and beautiful reasons to believe the soul lives on. If we were only physical creatures, how could we rise to such greatness? We challenge wild animals, cross oceans, build cities, create governments, and study the stars. We understand how the sun and moon move, how seasons change, and how nature works. We even track the future on tablets and make predictions. None of that would be possible if we didn't have something divine in us, a soul able to understand huge and powerful ideas. So you're not really going from life to death, Axiochus. You're moving from life to something better, something eternal. You won't lose good things. You'll gain clearer, purer joy, free from pain and the limits of the body. Once your soul is free from this body, you'll go to a peaceful place where there's no suffering, no aging, and no noise or fear. You'll live in calm, quiet air, surrounded by nature, thinking deeply, not for crowds, but in the presence of truth. Axiochus, you've completely changed my thinking, Socrates. I'm no longer afraid of dying. In fact, I'm starting to look forward to it. I even want to speak like the orators do, with strong words. I've been thinking about higher things and feel renewed, like I've become a new person. Socrates, if you're up for it, I'll share another story. A man named Gobryas, who was one of the Magi, told it to me. He said that during the time of Xerxes, his grandfather, also named Gobryas, was sent to watch over the island of Delos. That's where two goddesses, Opis and Hecaergis, were believed to have come from the far north. He learned that when the soul leaves the body, it travels to a hidden place deep underground. That's where Pluto, the god of the underworld, has a palace as grand as Zeus's. Earth is in the middle of the world, and the sky wraps around it. The gods in the sky rule one part, and the gods below rule the other. Some are brothers, and others are their children. To get to Pluto's land, there are iron gates locked with special keys. Once opened, the soul crosses the rivers Acheron and Cocytus. Then it's taken to Minos and Rhadamanthus, the judges of the underworld. They question each soul about the life it lived. You can't lie there. If a good spirit guided you during life, you're sent to the land of the good. There, the seasons are always pleasant. Fresh water flows, flowers bloom, and people discuss philosophy, enjoy music, and join in joyful festivals. Everything is calm and beautiful. There's no pain, no harsh weather, just gentle sunlight and warm air. The truly honored, like those who took part in the sacred mysteries, are given special places there. Even Heracles and Dionysus are said to have gone to the underworld after being part of these rites. It gave them courage for the journey. But those who lived wicked lives are punished. The Furies drive them into the deep, dark parts of the underworld. There they suffer endless pain. There are the daughters of Danaus with their leaky jars, Tantalus dying of thirst, Tydeus with his insides torn, and Sisyphus pushing a stone that always rolls back down. Wild beasts attack some, and others are haunted by the burning torches of the Furies. Their punishments never end. That's what Gobryas told me, but you, Axiochus, can judge for yourself. As for me, reason tells me this for sure. The soul is completely immortal, and wherever it goes after death, there's no pain. So if you've lived a good life, Axiochus, you'll be happy, whether you go above or below. Axiochus, I'm honestly speechless, Socrates. I'm not just free from fear. I actually want to die now. Your words have convinced me deeply. It feels like they came from the heavens. I'm ready to leave this life behind for something better. For now, I'll quietly reflect on everything you've said. Come visit me again at noon, Socrates. Socrates, I will. For now, I'll take a walk back to Sinosarges, where I was headed before you called me here. The end. Thank you for reading.